it's 8:15, let's, we'll get started here if everyone can be seated. And I'll start with the roll call. Kaminsky.
Present.
Kunkel.
Here.
Reinhardt is out. Sager.
Here.
Scott is out. Van Bergen.
Here.
And I'm here, and we have a quorum. Do I have a motion for the previous minutes, to approve the previous minutes? Tracy Van Bergen moves. Carl Kaminsky seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any public comment?
We do.
Jerry, public comment.
Good morning.
Is that, Colleen, is it on?
It's on.
Good morning. I don't think it.
If we're recording, just speak, yeah.
Oh, okay. My name is Terry Capel. I'm a 51 or 52 year resident of McHenry County. Over that period of time, I've experienced public transportation in our county. I was here when RTA expanded to our county, including bus service in the cargo administration. During that time, bus service we had ran every hour on the hour from 5 o'clock hour until the 7 o'clock hour. That bus service, though it didn't cover the whole county, it did also have Saturday service, which we don't have for buses anymore. It provided flexibility to individuals' daytime schedule. They could make plans on the moment, adjust their schedule if their appointment went long, if they wanted to, if a child was at a school and they needed to go home because they were sick. In the middle of the day, they could take the bus during the day. The current PACE dial-a-ride system that we have in our county, while it serves an important need to pick people up at their door and take them to where they're going and back, it's wholly inadequate to the needs of people who don't have other means of getting to and from. The dial-a-ride system is something that is limited in how many people can ride it, by how many stops it can make. A route bus service is limited only in the number of people who can fit on the bus. We need an expanded bus service in our route bus service in our county. The demographic profile of cities in our county has changed dramatically over that time. We no longer have hourly buses, route buses. In the middle of the day, there are no route buses available. You have to schedule a ride a day in advance, and oftentimes you cannot get a ride to and from where you're going with the dial-a-ride bus service. This makes it unreliable for people who go to a appointment or to go to work. It's wholly impractical. And when we did have an expanded bus service, there was a lot more ridership available. We have double the size of the county population, more than double. And many communities in our county are far bigger than we were at that time. Algonquin and Cary, for example, were only 5,000 people. Huntley was 1,600. And I think we can do better. We must do better. The lives of people who are dependent on public transportation are an important part of our community. And for every dollar spent on public transportation, $3 are returned to the economy. Let's invest in our people. we can do better. Another point is the route bus services do not serve the business districts, so people cannot use them effectively to go to stores, to restaurants, etc. And I think we can do better. And I plan to be visiting with you several times in the future because I know this is going to be a long-term fight. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Is there any other public comment? That was it?
Nobody signed up.
Okay. We do have two members, other board members in our audience today, Teresa and Carolyn. If you guys would like to come up and sit at the table, that's fine. You're welcome to. I just wanted to acknowledge that you were out there. We'll go to member comments. Does anyone have anything to say? Okay, I'll start off a little bit myself, just to welcome to the new members to this committee. If you've ever watched or attended these committees, I'm kind of a free-for-all kind of guy. At some point, I like everybody to, whatever your opinions are, to communicate them with the group. And I don't discourage you at all, and I'd like you all to feel free to speak. Would like you to look for acknowledgement, so we don't have a total free-for-all, but I do encourage that because that's the way we get things done. So the other thing is in the future, this is a real small agenda. On the consent agendas, the consent agendas are there so that if you have a question on one of them, we'll pull that off. You can pull those off and we'll ask to pull anything off. So if that being said, is there any one of the three items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to pull off? Okay. If not, then may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Brian Sager.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Kaminsky. And if there any dialogue, any questions? Okay. Proceed to a vote. Carl Kaminsky.
Yay.
Kunkel.
Yes.
Sager.
Yes.
Van Bergen.
Yes.
Kearns, yes. Motion carries. Down to new business, staff recognition.
You'll see for the new board members, we do recognize staff at the DOT here, so we got a couple of recognitions. We will introduce new employees as they hired so that you see their faces. And that this committee is a little bit different than others, is the entire DOT team participates in our meetings. So you'll see presentation from various team members with it. It's just not all gonna come from me always. We work collaboratively here with that. So with that, we have, the first is introducing our newest maintenance worker, and Austin Creasy, our road crew supervisor, will introduce Tyson.
All right, for you, those of you that don't know me, I'm Austin Creasy, the vegetation maintenance supervisor. With me,
It's like, oh man.
this is Tyson Pace. He is the newest member of the vegetation crew here in our maintenance department. Tyson is a lifelong resident of Marengo. He is a graduate of Marengo High School. He comes to us from Arnold Magnetics in Marengo. He worked there for 13 years. In his spare time, he enjoys farming, working with his show animals, spending time with his wife of 16 years, his 5 stepchildren and 11 grandchildren. So please join me in welcoming Tyson to the maintenance department.
He's shy, we're gonna get a speech out.
Which is common, just so you know, very few are comfortable addressing it. Thank you, Tyson, thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
And that. Also, just for the committee's knowledge, we did have one of our maintenance workers, in our mechanics, retired. Yesterday was his last day after 11 years with us. He had been working not here, but since he was 14 years old. We're very fortunate that we have found, we've conducted the interview process, and a new individual will be starting next Monday. And that's a big deal for us. Some of you haven't been around. We were at the point mid-year last year that I was getting a resignation letter once a week. We were down 25% of our staff. And I know the team's going to look at me and say, you just cursed us, but I'm going to say next Monday, we will be fully staffed for maintenance, which is a big deal. And that our experience has gone down substantially from where we've used to be, but we're pretty fortunate with this environment and people with CDLs to even have the quality individuals on our team. So just wanted to bring that up. Another one for staffing, we do employee recognition, as you know, on the agenda, but we also do employee of the quarter. So employees are nominated by their peers. The management team reviews those nominations and then makes a selection for the employee of the quarter. We give recognition to that employee at the committee meetings. We will do that a little bit later because the person who did win it, I don't want to give the name away yet, does have to drop off her grandson at school this morning. So, and that we just approached her yesterday and gave her the award. So we'll cover that later. And then also, just so you know, normally there's a seat right next to Assistant Director of Transportation Scott Hennings there for the State's Attorney's Office. Tom Cahill is the newly identified Assistant State's Attorney that handles all DOT matters. He will also sit here in all committee meetings typically, and that as a parliamentarian, but also will be given updates a lot of times in exec session on items that they would be working on. This is a very critical position for the DOT, and the reason that we have it is at one point early in my career, I personally, as a department head, was dealing with 8 different state's attorneys. And at the time it took to train them, to get them up to speed on what our issues were, was quite excessive. And so we do have a separate individual with that. So, any questions for me before we'll move on? No? Scott, why don't we go do your presentation first for the 2050, and then we'll go over the department overview.
It was going to be a short agenda today, so I hope it's okay. I wanted to get your money's worth, so I got a bit of a longer presentation this morning. I wanted to get this committee familiar with our 2050 long-range transportation plan. For those that don't know what this is, every 10 years or so, the county does a long-range transportation plan, and it looks out into the future, and it tries to figure out, okay, what are the projects we'll be working on for the next 20, 30 years? What do people want us to do? What priorities should we set? And so the 2050 plan we're working on right now, and for those that don't know me, I'm Scott Hennings. I'm the Assistant Director of Transportation here at DOT. I oversee planning, but also our finance section, our IT section here, as well as at DOT. So any questions you have, you can reach out to me after the meeting. And I will hand out a PDF of this PowerPoint after the meeting as well, so you don't have to take notes throughout the presentation. So why do we plan for transportation? A lot of people ask me this. And so what I like to say is there's a bunch of obvious reasons why. One is we want to make sure the public's preferences are reflected in what we do every day. That's probably the most important thing. We don't want to be doing things the public doesn't want us to do or doesn't feel is a priority. We also use plans to ensure we have adequate staffing and the financial resources to accomplish what we say we're going to do over the next 20 or 30 years. But most importantly, it's to implement projects, right? That's why we're all here, is to get stuff built and to be able to maintain the things that we built. Looking back at previous plans, the projects we actually got finished and accomplished were ones that had the greatest level of detail in our long-range transportation plans. So there is a direct relationship between the priorities we set in these plans and stuff we actually end up doing. Stuff like the Algonquin Western Bypass, the Illinois 47 and 23 interchanges with I-90, those were projects that were called out in our long-range transportation plans. The widening of Algonquin Road, Raycott Road, Walkup Road, and Randall Road most recently were also big parts of our previous plans. And then finally, the expansion of our bus program, MC Ride. That was something that our 2040 plan really set the stage. And over the last 10 years, we've made great strides on kind of expanding that program to what it is today. And it's important to note too, you all might have heard that P&D, our county P&D department, is doing their 2050 plan. It's important to know we are coordinating with them on their plan. The idea is that our plan and their plan will speak to one another, and they will be coordinated to the greatest extent possible. Their plan is focused more on land use, our plan is transportation, but inherently those two things are going to be related, and so I sit on the RPC as an ex officio member, and my goal is to make sure their plan and our plan jive with one another. Finally, McHenry County Moves, which is the name of our plan, Moves 2050, like other plans, has been funded by 2 federal planning grants. So this isn't something that the county is funding wholly by ourselves. We're lucky enough to get an IDOT grant and a grant from CMAP, our regional NPO, to pay for roughly 72% of the cost of this plan. So that's pretty important to know as well. All right, moving on. So first things first, if you haven't checked out our website, please go do that after this meeting, and encourage your constituents, your friends, your neighbors, your family to go and do the same. It's McHenry, www.mchenrycountymoves2050.com. And on this website, you can see everything I'm going to go over today is housed on this website. There's also an opportunity for you to provide comments on the website as well. We have an interactive map where you can drop a comment. You can talk about things that we need to be working on over the next 20 or 30 years. So I'm going to go into first our public engagement. That's really what we've been doing since 2021, which is when we started this plan. It was about a year and a half ago. And we've had 2 rounds of public engagement. The first round I'm going to go over right now started in October of 2021 and went through January of 2022. So about a 3-month period. And really, it's set out to be very broad. We wanted to kind of get the public's general ideas about our current system, how it's operating, things we can do better, as well as to kind of figure out what their priorities are. What should the goals of this plan be? What should the objectives of the plan be? And then the idea is later on, as we get further along, we're going to get more specific in the questions we ask the public about particular projects or ideas. So we asked people, how do they get around? What are their priorities? What are ways we can improve? Some topics we included were the transportation network funding system. How do we fund our system itself? Safety, transportation safety, reliability, transit, bicycle and pedestrian features that are necessary, and as well as environmental concerns people might have. Transportation system does have environmental consequences, and so that's been a big part of the Phase 1 engagement overview. And you can see here some of the outreach stuff we've done to date in the Phase 1. We had an online forum, project website. We actually went out into the community. We had workshops where people came to us. We asked more specific questions, as well as the online map I mentioned earlier. So in Phase 1, public outreach, we had about 800 survey responses, and I'll get into more later. We did even better than this during Phase 2. So stakeholder workshops, we actually convened a group, 3 groups of local experts in their respective fields, and we kind of did a deeper dive with the stakeholder workshops. And we had representatives from our cities, our townships, transit agencies, colleges, the Conservation District, Chambers of Commerce. They all joined us to kind of give their input on this plan. And again, all this is online. I'm not going to go through all this today, but you can check it out later. In addition, I mentioned we went out into the community, right? We did targeted ads on social media in various zip codes. If we weren't getting a high response rate in Harvard, which is what ended up being the case, we did more targeted advertisement in the Harvard area to get more responses out there. And all told, we reached about 140,000 people. Now, these aren't people that gave comments. These are people who saw our ads on social media and had the opportunity to then take the next step and give public comments later on. We also did community events. We went out to the Starline factory in Harvard during one of their craft fairs. We talked to people out there. We went to the downtown McHenry holiday walk, Mary Carey Parade in Cary. And we went to the Crystal Lake Metro Station to talk with commuters as they got on the train as well. And then who did we hear from? So I like to go over this just to make sure everybody understands, these aren't just a certain demographic. We was pretty representative of the county as a whole. I know this is hard to read, but again, you can check it out. It's roughly split between males and females. Race and ethnicity was roughly representative of the county as a whole. So we feel like we did a pretty good job, not only talking to residents of McHenry County, but people who work in McHenry County that might live elsewhere. We wanted to get their input as well because they drive our roads, they use our transit system just like residents do as well. This map I like to show, it's a heat map showing all of the comments we received on our online map. And you can kind of see where a lot of people wanted us to focus, which is along the state routes. You can kind of see clearly here that Illinois 47 and Illinois 31 are pretty easy to see on this map. And you know, a lot of them were in the southeast part of the county. We did get, again, we tried to get out more to the western part of the county to reach residents out there, but it's a little more difficult. But I like to show this map because it does kind of show where we got the bulk of the comments directed our way. And this survey was open, again, during the 3-month period from October of 21 through January of 22. And by the way, there's a QR code if anybody wants during this meeting. You can just scan that QR code and it'll take you right to the public engagement report. So some of the questions we asked. You know, we asked generally, describe our transportation system. Is it meeting your needs? Is it not meeting your needs? How would you rate it, 1 to 5? And you know, we heard mixed reviews, I guess. 2.75 out of 5. You know, we heard some of the issues regarding reliability, congestion, as well as lack of transit, which we heard during the public comment period as well today. And then deteriorating infrastructure. A lot of people said, you know, you got bridges out there that are nearing their end of their useful life. Those bridges are important to get you to work every day. So those 3 topics were what we heard a lot of over this public comment period. We also did a hypothetical budget activity where we gave people a hypothetical $100 to spend. And we said, you spend that $100 any way you want on our transportation system. We broke it into 6 different categories. And what was interesting is people really wanted to spend that $100 in a variety of ways. It wasn't all, people didn't want to spend it all on roads and bridges. They said, well, we need to care more about the environment. So we're going to make sure some of that money that we do on transportation is being spent to improve the environment, as well as add bike paths, sidewalks, more bus service, improving safety. These are all things that people felt were important, not just widening a road or replacing a bridge. And again, this was kind of what we heard 10 years ago when we did our 2040 plan as well. And I'll mention too that allocating funds in this manner would be a dramatic departure from the status quo. And every roadway agency today spends a lot more of their funding on roadways than what is shown here. This is kind of the public's preferences, which is different than a lot of the public agencies that spend 90+% of their funding on roads and bridges. Safety was a huge topic as well. We asked people what are the 3 issues preventing safer transportation system. Distracted driving came up a lot, especially with cell phones, you know, drunk driving, impaired driving now. There's a lot of things people were focused on when it comes to safety. And then lack of dedicated facilities for cyclists, for pedestrians. A lot of our roads still lack sidewalks, and that forces people to walk in the street. And when you might have conflicts there with vehicles, people are concerned about that as well. And then reliable roadway travel. We asked people, do you feel like traffic is getting better or worse? And it's important to know, this question was asked beginning of 2021, of 2022, sorry. And so by then, traffic had actually rebounded significantly from the dip during the pandemic. But it's important to know that trends were going up, right? So during early 2020, at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, traffic was cut by more than half. And that was because we were all staying at home, weren't going into work every day, or some of us weren't going into work every day. And since that time, that was a temporary blip, but since that time, traffic has gone up dramatically. And so when we ask this question, it's important to keep in mind that people perceived early 2020 to then, which was a huge increase in traffic. And so people said, well, it's getting worse. That's true, but if you compare today versus 2019, it's actually probably gone down. The traffic volumes are roughly where they were in 2019, or maybe even declined a little bit since 2019. So it kind of depends on what your timelines you're kind of trying to examine here. Congestion. Oops, sorry. Skip one. You know, again, nothing really new here. People say, yes, there is congestion. It's not as bad as other parts of the region, but yet it still does exist in certain areas, on certain roadways. But we asked also about reliability. You can have congestion and you can plan for congestion, but if you don't know if your trip to work is going to be 10 minutes or 30 minutes, that's where people get frustrated, if they can't plan ahead. And that's what's known as reliability. And by and large, people thought that our system was reliable. I mean, more than half the people agree or completely agree that the system is reliable from one day to the next. So they can plan for that congestion to occur. And then transit. What would make you increase your use of transit? And what was interesting for me was the RTA. I'm involved with the RTA, and they do a lot of surveys. People focus a lot on the RTA surveys on quality of life things like warming shelters at metro stations, or more marketing to know when the buses are going to arrive or the trains are going to arrive. Real-time bus trackers, for example. Those are all things that are a hot topic these days in the transit world. But what people told us in McHenry County is that really they want more service. They want more routes. They want more frequent service. So not having a gap in the middle part of the day where the buses don't run, but having service every half hour or 45 minutes throughout the entire day. That's really what people want us to focus on. Not as much with the quality of life stuff that you see in other parts of the region. And then I will mention that next month we want to do a deeper dive into transit specifically. As our transit coordinating body called PTAC, Public Transportation Advisory Committee. So I've just kind of whet your appetite for next month where we're going to dive deeper into this topic as well. And then bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. You see some quotes up here which I thought were enlightening. This was very representative of what we heard, is that people think that the network is incomplete. They want us to fill some of the gaps that exist on our bicycle network, our sidewalk network. People think that biking really isn't an option in McHenry County because they can't get from here to there. And they want to get from here to there on their bike, they just can't. Or they don't feel safe doing so. And then obviously people would use them more if we had more facilities. That's kind of a no-brainer, but we still thought it was important to ask. Environmental and social, what can we do to reduce our emissions? We know the transportation system is either the #1 or #2 source of carbon emissions currently today, and it's actually growing compared to other sources. And so we wanted to make sure this was a topic of the plan that we asked about. So what can we do? I mean, people said, by and large, to focus on EV, electric vehicle infrastructure, both the charging stations as well as the rollout of vehicles themselves. But they also wanted us to focus on transit, getting people out of their cars into other modes, and planting trees as part of projects, things like that, building more roundabouts to keep traffic flowing instead of coming to a stop at intersections. I did some research in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see here, this bottom line here, this is registered electric vehicles in McHenry County since 2017. It's very hard to see, but it is growing exponentially. And whether you believe in EVs or not, or the future of EVs, the market is definitely there, and it's growing every single month, and it's going to continue to grow into the future. The top line are hybrid vehicles in McHenry County, which is also going up since 2017. And then moving on, phase 2 engagement recap. So we did our second phase of engagement from the spring of 2022 last year, to the summer of last year. And again, we got more specific in the questions we asked. Like you can see here, we got about 2,000 responses, or interactions from folks during that period, that 3-month period. Some of the topics we touched on here. We got more into the goals and objectives of the plan, which were kind of crafted based on the phase 1 engagement that we heard. I'll get into those in a second. Again, community outreach, the events that we went to, you can see here. We We tried to get every corner of the county to not leave any community out or any township out. We have over 100,000 community touch points, which is, again, when people see our signs, our advertisement, things like that. And then again, social media was a big part of that. We really dived deep into social media, which is where a lot of people get their news these days, believe it or not. Again, where were the comments that we received directed at? These are where people want to see improvements made. Easy to see, 31, 47 in Woodstock, as well as in the southeast part of the county, are primarily where we received the bulk of the comments during phase 2. We again held stakeholder workshops with a variety of people where we dive deeper into types of, roadway improvements that we could be making in this plan. We asked, do you prefer at intersections, traffic signals, or roundabouts? Do you like the idea of more bypass routes throughout the county to bypass downtowns instead of having to go through downtown Marengo, for example? Should be looking at a bypass in Marengo to get truck traffic out of Marengo and allow their downtown to sort of be what the downtown is. Surprisingly, people preferred roundabouts, or at least the people we talked to preferred roundabouts over traffic signals. And that was for a variety of reasons: safety, congestion, but that was kind of a surprise for us. And some quotes down the bottom right-hand corner as well. We asked specifically about rural safety because, believe it or not, a lot of our traffic fatalities and serious injury crashes are occurring in the more rural parts of the county, west of 47, where you don't have a lot of the infrastructure that you do in the more urbanized areas. So we kind of wanted to do a deeper dive into rural roadway safety. So we asked about things like rumble strips, street lighting, wider shoulders, turn lanes, and we asked people to kind of rank these different improvements based on what they would want to see more of on our transportation system. We heard a lot of people say that they think rumble strips are a great idea, they should be everywhere, or at least be places that make sense to put these things in. Turn lanes were obviously another thing, flashing advanced warning signs, pavement markings, things like that. I promise I'm almost done here, hang in with me. Again, we held workshops, we talked about transit, bike ped. I'm not going to go through this, you can read it after the meeting as well. What's surprising is that even though MC Ride's been in existence for over 10 years now, that's our Dial-A-Ride program, we heard from a lot of people that they didn't know what it was. They'd never heard of MC Ride. And it's been around, it's been serving, we've now served well over 1 million people over the last decade, giving over 1 million rides on this bus program, but some people have never heard of it. And so we need to do better to get the word out about what this program is, how people can contact the call center to reserve a ride on our bus program as well. And then we set some goals and visions for the plan. These came from what we heard during the public engagement. So I'm going to go through these. These are very important. These are going to set the stage for the rest of the plan, for selecting projects that we're going to prioritize. The first goal is going to be Vision Zero. We want to bring our fatalities on our roadway system down to zero. And this is a long-term plan, and we know it's not going to happen overnight, but that's the goal for our plan, is to improve safety. A more complete and connected multimodal network, and that can be bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, it can be transit connectivity, it can be roadway connectivity, and we're not specific about that. Efficient movement of people and goods, making sure there's not bottlenecks, congestion that's going to impact our economy, people's commutes. Mobility and accessibility for all, making sure that there's an equity part of this plan, and then protecting our environmental resources. So it's going to be, again, one of the goals of this plan going forward. I'm not going to go through either of these, because I already touched on those a lot, as well as these. But you all can read this at your leisure after the meeting. We asked people to kind of rate these different goals I just went through. And people by and large thought they were good goals. We didn't hear that we were missing anything. People felt that we captured in these goals what they want to see in this plan. So that was good to know we were on the right track with these as well. So what are the next steps? Here's where I'm going to close. Right now, we're currently working with our consultant to develop a draft plan based on everything we've heard over the last year and a half. Throughout the spring, we're going to be gathering additional input from stakeholders and public, including this committee, on the draft plan. So this committee has a very important role to play in developing where this plan goes from here. In the summer, we're going to take everything we heard in the spring and update the plan and present different chapters for your review. Probably every meeting throughout the spring and summer, we're going to bring a different chapter forward for your consideration and your comments, your direction. And then in fall, winter of 23, later this year, we're going to be seeking approval for adoption of this plan. And that's sort of the timeline from here to adoption over the next year. As I said before, if anybody has any questions or you want to sit down with me to talk about the plan, specific chapters or specific things you want included, I'm happy to do so. I've got some business cards with my contact information. And that's really all I have. Thank you for your time. And are there any questions at this point that I can answer?
Hey, Scott, in our outreach, do you reach out, or have we reached out in a concentrated effort to some of the all the municipalities and cities and villages on their long-range plan that they're coordinating?
We have. So we tasked our consultant very early on with gathering all of the plans, all the transportation plans for every city, village, township, every plan that exists out there. They gathered all of that, and that was part of our existing conditions report. What are cities already working on, working towards? And those things are being built into our plan. They're not going to. This isn't a plan that's going to counteract what the cities are already doing. We want our plan to build off of their plans and kind of expound on those things. In addition, we've done presentations to the Council of Mayors, which is where all the cities come together to kind of talk about transportation issues. And we're more than willing to go out to the Council of Governments to talk to the mayors themselves about this plan and things that they want to see in this plan as well. So we're trying to do our best, Jim, to kind of get out there and get some direction from the cities that are in the county.
Any kind of, I don't know how to put this, but on your goals where you had the people say, hey, I want this, and this, any possibility that you're going to go back and revisit that by saying, okay, these were your goals, but this is what we're going to take out of your pocket to pay for it? You know, because that could definitely shift. Because if they're not paying for it, know what the cost, oh yeah, I like a bike. Yeah, let me get some free charging for my car because I don't have to pay for it. Okay, here's the price tag of what it's going to cost you for it. Any kind of...
Yeah, so how we typically handle that part of the plan is, you know, we've got this baseline revenue model where status quo, we're collecting X millions of dollars per year for transportation. Over 30 years, that equates to so much money we can spend on projects. If we have a laundry list of projects that exceed that revenue projection, then the question of what kind of revenue increases are you willing to entertain in order to get a widened 47 or a new interchange at some other location? That's where we ask people to do that trade-off exercise. We have yet to go through and prioritize projects and kind of do that estimate of here's how much expenditures we have, here's how much revenue we have. But in the future, if we get to that point, we are going to have to do exactly what we said.
Okay, just wondering.
Right.
I appreciate this so much, Scott. Thank you so much for the update on this. The reality is, I think we are all aware that transportation developments and projects are very, very long-term projects. They don't just happen. We can't say today that we want an improvement on this roadway, whether it's a state highway or other ways. We can't say that in 1 year and then the next year it's going to be taken care of. I mean, we're talking 15 years at the minimum really to get a lot of these projects taken care of. And I want to say, in full disclosure, I'm the McHenry County representative on the RTA board. Projects are very, very challenging with RTA and with the service agencies and organizations. One of the reasons is because the cost of these are so phenomenally high. But the other thing too is that if we look at these long-term improvements, it just takes a tremendous amount of time to go through not just the financing portion, but the political aspects of that as well. I'm a firm believer that McHenry County, and I'm going to put this out on the table, I think McHenry County needs to be more aggressive in so many ways to try to get a better share of the pie, if you will, in terms of the transit monies that are out there. But we have to realize that politically, obviously, because we're in the Chicagoland area, the Chicagoland, Cook County area get the giant portion of it, and their representation politically as it is divided and as it is stated in the legislation is very, very strong. And so all the suburban counties are competing against a very, very large force out there. But I do believe that we all need to be much more concerted in terms of our aggressive effort to try to get some of that coming here to McHenry County. And that's something I've tried to take forward to the RTA board, but I appreciate so much this data, and I think this data can help significantly in trying to bring others around to the needs that exist in Arcala County. So I won't say too much more about that, but I do appreciate the transit information, and likewise the demand that people are saying exists for that, because I agree 100%.
Thank you, Dr. Sager. I know for a fact a lot of the federal grants that are out there that we should be more aggressive in going after, they all require a long-range plan. So you can't apply for a grant unless that project that the grant's going to fund is in a plan. It's in one of your plans somewhere and it's called out, there's detail behind it. Because if the federal agency is going to give you some money, they want to make sure that it's a priority for the county. And so this plan is going to feed into exactly what you said, going after federal funding sources, state funding sources, and other otherwise.
Thank you.
And then a couple of things following what Dr. Sager said in the questions here, and Scott said, we can't overstate the importance of this long-range plan. Just because of what Dr. Sager said, transportation projects don't happen overnight, and that they are long-term, and you have to start planning them early. But for you as a committee and as a county board member, this is what drives us into our 5-year plan, which is much closer to you. That's what we're doing in our 5 years, and we do that on an annual basis. And you'll also, as a committee, get updates with that too. The key point that Mr. Kaminsky mentioned, this is all fiscally constrained. We have limited resources. The needs by far outweigh what we can do from a monetary standpoint. And again, that trickles down into our 5-year plan. And then also one more step is when we do our annual budget. And at next committee meeting, you'll see as new board members here, we're going to take a lot of time to do a lot of these presentations. And as Scott alluded to last time, we're going to do a transit presentation that's going to hit on everything that we do on this. Dr. Sager is our RTA rep. We got Aaron Smith as our PACE representative too, and that will be asked to be here. And we're also going to do a brief presentation on our budget processes and what it goes into, because again, because transportation projects don't happen overnight, there's a lot of carryover of dollars from one budget to another that are already accounted for. So if you look in at just a quick nugget, our budget for the DOT this year is $80 million. And however, a substantial portion of that, $50 million, is for the Wrangell Road project. But we have to include those dollars in the program. So when you see next year's, we may have only spent $2 million this year. So that means $48 million will be in next year's budget too, but that's already been approved and committed to by the board. So I just wanted to bring those up.
Scott?
If I can add one more thing under that, Joe, 2050 plan and the 5-year plan were referenced, but when you sit down and look at your strategic plan next week, you're going to see both of those documents tie into that overall strategic plan, and this is your vision for how you want to prioritize the objectives of the county. So keep in mind, when we look at all these plans, they all have to fit in with one another. As Scott mentioned, the planning development's comprehensive plan fits into this plan. So keep everything tied and synced up, because this is really where you establish your priorities, and you will have to make some decisions today and tomorrow that are going to affect the long range of the county. So we'll put that on the table.
steal my thunder, because the DOT will have an active role in your strategic plan. And we've been asked to participate. You'll have myself and senior management that will be participating in that, as many of the issues that you face at this committee will be in the strategic plan.
All right, thank you. I guess so, you already covered everything on that, but, one thing that we usually do, and we didn't do this time, is try to introduce everybody in the room. And
I'll do that in the department
Okay,
overview.
thank you.
And I'll do that, and
So I think we're going to that right now.
well, I was gonna go to that until Scott just stepped out, because our employee of the quarter is here. And Scott can, why don't you do employee of the quarter, Scott, and then I'll go through the organization.
All right, thank you for bearing with me again. Jenny, come on up. So I have the pleasure of introducing Jennifer Emiliano. She was nominated by DOT staff as the employee of the quarter for the fourth quarter of 2022. Jenny's been with the DOT since March of 2015, and since that time she's grown into an invaluable member of our finance team. Jenny goes above and beyond with every interaction and every task she completes. Over the last year, she has taken on a new role at DOT, accepting every change of her responsibilities with grace and precision. She's worked hard to help implement our new P card, which maybe you can explain a little about that a little later, and All Paid, which is our credit card vendor payment system, where her assistance and input was second to none. While thriving in the technical part of her role, she has also grown into a great mentor for our younger staff, where her peers find comfort in her knowledge and her stability in her direction that she gives. When staff come to her seeking guidance, they leave feeling heard, understood, and with clear solutions to their problems. While Jenny thrives at the DOT, she's an even better mom to her 3 grown kids and enjoys spending every extra moment she has with 2 young grandsons. She's a great team player and a pleasure to work with. Her smile and laugh are utterly infectious, and MCDOT is lucky to have her on our team. So please help me congratulate Jenny on being employee of the quarter.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Jenny was recognized yesterday, and that usually we do it at our monthly all-staff meeting, but that's not for a couple weeks. We didn't have one in December, so we surprised her at her desk. And a lot of times it makes the individual uncomfortable when we're all coming and walking up, but Jenny was a trooper and well-deserving. And as employee of the quarter too, we do give them or identify a reserved parking spot for them. It is, everybody knows we're limited. We can't necessarily give a monetary side, but we look for ways to recognize our team players. So thank you, Jenny, well done. Thank you, Scott. Okay, department overview. So, as I'm sure you guys have heard already through county administration in your previous meetings, all departments have been asked to give an overview of what they do. You guys are unique here with this, is we're the only department that reports to you, so you'll get to know us really well. That the meetings are held here at the DOT, because as you can see in the audience that a lot of our team is here, and you see different people that'll be doing the presentations or topics, or if you have questions on a resolution. Follow up a little bit what Chairman Kirk says. If you're reviewing the packet, you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us before the meeting, and that so that we can make sure, A, that your questions answered, or if we need to do a little more research, it does give us some time to do that, and that plus it makes the meetings very efficient with that. The other is, anytime you want a tour of this facility, you are more than welcome. Those of you that are adventuresome, we've had previous members we've put up in the bucket truck, 30 feet up in the air if you're not afraid of heights. At that time, the county board chairwoman had got stuck for a little bit up there. She was a trooper with that. But anytime you want a tour, and we'll be doing one today for anybody that has the time afterwards. And with that, that's where I'm going to go very general here. We easily, as you can see, be very well prepared. We could have done a drawn out PowerPoint presentation to you. that might have been a little bit of overkill for it. So I'm going to go quickly through here. And one of our first items that we do is every new board member that comes in, we send you a welcome letter. Everybody got one here. I put it out on your desk at the December meeting. I gave you my business card. Please feel free to reach out to me or any members of our team here. But it did identify our key documents that we use here at the DOT. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us on them. So in front of you is our organizational chart. This is the DOT. As mentioned before, we have several areas that we focus on. Our structure is set up with an engineering and construction side, administration, finance, and planning, and the maintenance section. The three individuals with that have all been identified in your little handy-dandy photo sheet that county administration put to you in front of you. But these are individuals you're going to see at these committee meetings all the time. And you've already seen Scott Hennings. Scott is our Assistant Director of Transportation. Daryl Kuntz over here behind you is our Assistant County Engineer. And then for maintenance, you got Ed Markuson, who's our Maintenance Superintendent, and then Beth Skoronsky, who's the Assistant Maintenance Superintendent. Also joining us in the crowd today, underneath Daryl's section, is our Construction Manager and Design Manager. Design Manager is Joyce DeLong, and next to her is our Construction Manager, Jeremy Stull. And this represents a lot of the areas that we cover as far as our responsibilities here at the DOT, and we have a lot, and that we do a lot of different things here within the DOT. Underneath Joyce's area for the design area, we have 2 design engineers, a traffic operations engineer, permitting, and that we got 2 individuals within that permit area. Just to make committee members aware, I mentioned staffing before, and that we have to plan for that because we may have 2 retirements in that area, and both of them are in the permits area. That is not an easy position to fill, and that, so we'll see where it does take us. You'll see in future meetings that we'll be bringing forward for your consideration and approval is career planning steps, so that when somebody starts their employment at the DOT, they know what they need to do and what the next step would be for them to progress their career here. Even with those, just so you know, the county board in the past would approve a contract because of staffing usage and keeping up with the number of projects that we have. We have a 5-year contract with Trans Systems to help provide us overview in the design section, and that has been very instrumental in helping us move projects along. Construction, we have several vacancies here that have been here for a long time. And at construction right now with the capital plan, it's been very difficult and at the fill. And what I mean by that is we can't even get people to submit their names to review and to consider for interviews. Again, here the county board passed for a firm, a local firm here, Baxter & Woodman, to help us with construction services. We don't have the option when there's a construction project going on to say, well, we don't have the people. We have to have somebody out there being our eyes and ears to make sure everything's being done to the plans and specifications. So that is a 3-year contract that we have here. Jeremy does have Pablo as our construction engineer too, but our other 2 individuals are also very young from where we used to before. And then, so bring that up. Scott oversees our administration, finance, and planning, and you'll see the 3 positions there in purple of our transportation planning manager, fiscal operations manager, and systems analyst. Colleen is with us as our systems analyst. For those of you that were here earlier, Colleen's in the corner wave for everybody. We're very fortunate to have an individual like this, and Greg Shane's here. He's not with the DOT, but he's so helpful with everything. You guys all know Greg, but he's here to make sure things go smoothly, both of them from a technology standpoint. Finance, we have 3 individuals there. You met Jenny. We have another younger individual. She's been with us, but they process all our bills and everything, and we have a ton of paperwork that's required to be done, and auditing that we have to do. And I would probably say if we're not the top, we're the top 2 of processing, invoicing, and amount of audits that we have to do. And then planning, again, Scott gave you an update here today on our 2050. Jasmine, one of the planners, we were going to have her partake in it, so you would have got to meet her. However, she tested positive for COVID, so she's not here today. We have a design engineer within that. Scott mentioned council of mayors. The county, and specifically the DOT, does house and pay for the 20% match for the planning liaison. That's been another position. It's usually a pretty transient position with it, if you've ever been involved with it. Usually we would have more applications than we knew to do with. We don't have a single person applying for the position right now. So that does make it really difficult at times with that. And then right now, to compound that, right now, our transportation planning manager left employment here with McHenry County at the end of November, right, end of November. He went back to R1, which is the MPO of the Rockford region, and that stuff. Great individual, great team player, but the offer was too good for him not to go back to R1. Maintenance. So you see there, you've met Ed and Beth. Not surprising, this time of year is crazy and busy for them, so we're happy to have them here. It's not snowing today, but I'm sure it will be at some future meetings with that. Both of them are very instrumental when we're planning not only what we're doing here with operations for all of our roads that we pride ourselves on. We're also part of the team that makes those decisions when we had this pending storm here right before Christmas on what are we going to do with the county as a whole. And the group does look to us for information on what we're seeing on the roads, weather forecasting is telling us, and what we may have to plan for. And it's no small task. Just so you know, for this last storm, literally that Monday we came in, we had forecasts that were telling us potentially 31 inches of snow with blizzard conditions, and you know where it ended up. And so it can change dramatically, but we have to plan for that. And a lot of that is based on experience. And I'll give one example with this, is the blizzard of 2011. We knew that that was going to be substantial. Any of you that had to live through that or tried getting through that, it was crazy. With our maintenance workers, we put them up at the hotel in the city of Woodstock. Here we thought we were doing which is critical when you're in those events. So with this last storm, we were actually making preparations that they may have had to spend the night that Thursday and Friday, and that, which is really tough when it's before Christmas. But just to tell you how much planning it goes into it, it's quite a bit. Our maintenance areas are broken into 4 sections. We have a sign shop that creates any type of sign for our roadways that is necessary and anything else. We have a shop, that's our mechanics that fix all of the trucks that we can do. We have 148 pieces of equipment. 136 pieces of equipment that we're responsible for. Obviously, when we're in operations, that's what the priority is. If the truck breaks down, we need to get it back up. We don't have any backup trucks here. Every truck is out on the route. We used to have backup trucks. We do not have that anymore, and that because of decisions that were made before funding our capital program. We have a vegetation crew that does all of our vegetation work, and that, believe it or not, this time of year is a great time to improve sight lines and going out to make sure our roadways are safe. And then we also have our road crew. They're the ones who are going out doing improvements. If we have to do patching, putting in a culvert, doing some ditching work, that's all done. We have 31 maintenance workers. Those maintenance workers are represented by Local 150. and the county board at their November meeting did approve the latest 4-year contract for that, so that contract will go through 2026, correct, with that. So I just bring that up as I mentioned the difficulty of when we were losing people. Not that it's surprising, you guys will see in your probably first committees with administrative services, we were losing people because of pay. And that with that contract, we actually had 2 of our 6 vacancies that people came back to us. And that once they knew what was in the contract. So it was very instrumental. I'll end it there. I'll keep it at a very high level, as I mentioned. Those of you that have time for a tour, we would welcome you on that tour. We'll go into more, but feel free to answer any questions or if anybody has any comments.
One of the things that you mentioned was the difficulty, obviously, of keeping people on board, and I recognize that especially in today's job marketplace. And you also indicated that you work with people in career planning, and I appreciate that very much. Do you have routine conversations then about succession?
That's where we're going to get to, and we want it to be formalized.
Okay.
And the reason the formalization is we want to make it so that it's matter of fact. Right now, the process can be very cumbersome, and many of you who haven't sat on this before, usually we do it as part of the budget process. Well, the budget process starts as a department. We have to have ours turned in January. Unfortunately, it's not approved until November. So we lose that 6 months. We have to find ways to be more nimble and also let people know what that career path is. If you're going from an engineer 1 to engineer 2 and you have the training, or an engineer 2 to 3, and you've got your professional engineering license, that should be routine in nature. And that you say, you're going to be promoted as a department, we turn that, and then X amount of dollars are assigned with that promotion. So people know that. And that, because I do think that's going to be an attractive point we're going to need as the county to compete with the private sector.
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate your comment.
Seasonal workers or employees, you have how many? Is it 3?
It's 5 that we show on here. As part of the budget process, we actually have 7 seasonal positions, and those rotate throughout the years. At any one time, we can have 7 people on board. So in the summer, we'll bring in staff to help Jeremy in the construction section, depending on what our workload is. Maintenance will have them to help us a lot of times with our mowing responsibilities and that stuff. In the winter, though, we like to get snowbirds on board. And that, as I mentioned before, very difficult. And that CDL holders are in high demand. We have had to become more creative. In the past, everybody wanted that guarantee of 40 hours a week if they were going to come on. We've done that. Now we're hearing the other side that, hey, I want the flexibility. I don't want to come in 40 hours a week. I just want to come in when there's a storm. And that, okay, we're doing that now. That's how we advertise it. We put out a $1,000 signing bonus to do it. We have 0 snowbirds. And that's how hard it is. Before we had more than we could probably, who's our friend up north? They put out an ad for, in Walworth County, right?
Right.
$35 an hour.
Yep.
And that had to bring it through his board with their, not a single person applied for the position. So that's what we're here, just so you know, we're not the only ones. IDOT looks to do about 600 to 700 snowbirds just for District 1, which includes the McHenry County region. They are only at 300. So they can't even attract them or get people that are in there with them. How does that affect McHenry County? How long ago now was it? 5, 6 years ago? Dr. Sauger probably remembers that. We were asked as a county to take over some state routes. And we had done that, what, 70 miles? 72 miles that we had done. Somehow we got it done. It was a lower than average year, but we did get it done, and it worked out well, but I don't know that we will ever be able to be in that position again. And I'd like to think, and we did hear ones that we did the job really well.
It's the best shape the roads were ever in.
And it is tough, us being on the fringe, let's say. Our Woodstock yard is the only yard that's here. But kind of as Dr. Sager said, when you talk about funding and that stuff, the reality of the situation is IDOT has to move their staff around, and their focus is going to be on the interstate systems and further east of us, and we are usually left behind. With that.
Matt?
Yeah, this is just not a public phenomenon, this is a private phenomenon
Right.
too. We're dealing with the private sector also. People don't want to work. That's where we're at. And the dollars aren't driving it. Because we
Right.
did the same thing. We got called out with signing bonuses. I'm paying out more in labor. I'm paying more for general laborers than I used to pay for experienced carpenters. They're not coming. We don't have them. I think we lost everybody from about 23 years old to 30.
And that makes a big impact on when you're talking experience.
Mhm.
And for us, just for your reference, we go through our trucks, and if you go on a tour, when you stand next to them, while you see them out on the road, they may not look that big. They are huge pieces of equipment. And we spend $300,000. They're fully loaded with material, both salt and liquids. It's a lot of responsibility to put on a 20-year-old when conditions aren't exactly ideal.
Ms. Campbell, our board member in the audience.
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick question. So you talk about succession planning, which is, you know, that career path for
Right.
employees so that if they understand that they have a path forward. And you talk more about like how do you back up maintenance to get out on the roads and get the snow plowing done. And the pandemic didn't pan out to be this doomsday scenario where you had the entire staff out at all at once. But do you have a plan in place that says, okay, so if you're out, then Scott takes it. But if Scott's out and you're out, I mean, do you have that kind of like succession in an emergency where people start to really get sick or are out for some reason that you now have, once he's gone, you've got this person, but I mean, where you take it several layers deep?
Of course we do.
Okay.
And we have it to the nth degree because we are an emergency responder. And so, besides our organizational chart here and the structure with it, we are unique with it because we are part of that. So let's say that the Emergency Operations Center is activated. Well, I sit in the Emergency Operations Center, Ed and Beth and Colleen do. Well, that's 4 of our senior staff here. And so now you're putting emergency responsibilities on Daryl as the assistant county engineer, Scott is a transportation planner. So we spent a considerable amount of time of training, being aware of that. And also when you talk to Carolyn about the pandemic, we were one of the first departments, and it's because of Colleen here and working with that we embraced remote working. And that is a necessity again of what the workforce wants now. And I don't think that's no longer a wish list item. I think that's a requirement that we have to provide for many of our workers. So yes, we have that flexibility, but we also take it even a step further for if you want to know maintenance.
Right.
We have plow routes right now from, if we only had 13 people, all the way up to,
Normally we have 25 trucks on the 20 routes. But with the pandemic coming in, we created 13 additional maps if we were to lose a certain amount of people because of the COVID.
yeah. You know, and a lot of that is getting the message out too, because it's all expectation. Level of service will go down as our routes, if they get longer or we have pieces of equipment down, we're not going to be around as frequent as that we usually are. So a lot of times, that's why having a PIO, which we are fortunate with the DOT here, that helps get our message out and what's going on.
Speaking of message, I have to say, I'm not sure who's adding it in, that neighbors.
Next door?
The neighbors next door, that deal on the
Yeah.
internet. You guys have been doing a great job updating that.
Yeah,
I'll pass that along. Thanks, John.
that's,
We've heard a lot of people say exactly that.
Yeah,
They've
I
got
really like
information.
that's Colleen and Chris Grask, our PIO, looking for other opportunities Yeah, we've got a lot of outreach going there, a boatload, a lot more. And that's kind of like Scott talking about the 2050 long-range plan. We've had to become more creative of how are you reaching people. It's not like the old days, and I say old days because some of us have been in our position for enough, that you would have all these public interfacing meetings. That's not how a lot of people interact anymore. You gotta try these new sources. We're not the only department using that. EMA is using that when the winter storm event was coming in. Those reach a lot of people, but you do have to be creative, and you've gotta, there's a lot of strategy of how you get people to read your message. So thank you, sir, for recognizing that.
Okay. What do you want to go down to next here? You already covered your staff report.
Yeah, and that there's a, as you see, there's always an agenda item on here that if we have stuff as staff that we'll bring up with it, and that is coordinated. But we do have a need for executive session. It'll be more brief than usual, but for land acquisition and pending litigation.
Okay, so do I have a motion to go into executive session? Carl Kaminsky, Matt Kunkel seconds that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll switch over to that. Our other board members can come into this. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're out of executive session, we're back into regular session. And we gotta switch over here, right?
Yep.
I think we have anything else to do.
Sure, sir, I wouldn't mind.
What's that? Well, I've just noticed, it's the first agenda ever since I've been on this committee that has been like that. I thought it was just a regular agenda. And here we have a whole package.
Yeah,
You ready?
You like?
Okay,
Oh, sorry.
so calling back into regular session, with no further things going on other than the tour, then some.
Right, anybody that has the time, we will be doing a tour.
Are you going to Valley High also?
And the option is to go to Valley High after this, so all those who want to head over there, we can.
So those of you that have a lot of time, and that, and we can make the tour as long or as short as you would like. Or if there's multiple people, you can leave when you need to leave.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
Mr. Kunkel,
Go ahead.
moved, second by Carl. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.